The lawyer's pen clicked 3 times, a sharp, metallic sound that cut through the stagnant air of the Savannah courtroom. It was a rhythmic execution of my dignity. Elena's attorney, a man who wore a $3,000 suit like a second skin and smelled of expensive peppermint, leaned over the mahogany table. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and revulsion, the way one looks at a cockroach that refuses to be crushed. He told the judge that I was a ghost, a man of no substance, a bottom feeder who spent his nights scrubbing the filth of better men off the floors of St. Jude's Elementary. He called me a deadbeat. He said I was a financial void, a man who couldn't afford to buy his own children new shoes, let alone provide a life for a woman like Elena. The gallery chuckled, a soft, dry rustle of silk and judgment. I didn't look at them. I looked at the hole in the toe of my work boot and felt the weight of the silence I had built around myself like a fortress. The judge sighed, her glasses sliding down the bridge of her nose as she looked at my financial disclosure, a pathetic single page listing a checking account with $400 and a 2011 Ford truck with a rusted frame. She asked me if I had anything to offer the court before she finalized the settlement. I stayed silent. I let the humiliation wash over me, cold and gray, waiting for the clock to strike the hour. Because they didn't know about the basement. They didn't know about the cold storage wallets tucked inside the handle of my mop. And they certainly didn't know that while I was mopping Hallway B, I was dismantling the digital infrastructure of the people who thought they owned this city. Before I became the invisible man in the blue coveralls, I was a student of the static. I grew up in the shadow of the shipyards where the air tastes like salt and diesel and the promise of a broken back. My father was a welder who lost 3 fingers to a falling beam and his spirit to the bottle. My mother spent 20 years folding sheets in a hotel laundry room until her knuckles were too swollen to hold a fork. I watched them disappear into the machinery of labor, 2 people who worked until there was nothing left but the husks of who they used to be. I decided then that I wouldn't let the world see me coming. I found my first computer in a dumpster behind the public library when I was 12. It was a beige box of discarded potential. I spent my nights in the glow of a flickering monitor, teaching myself the language of the modern world. I didn't learn it in a classroom. I learned it in the dark, hunting for vulnerabilities in the systems that kept people like my parents at the bottom of the pile. By the time I was 19, I could navigate a Tier 4 data center like it was my own backyard. I didn't want the fame of a Silicon Valley wunderkind. I wanted the security of a ghost. I took the job at the school because it was the perfect camouflage. No one looks at the janitor. I am a part of the architecture, a moving shadow that smells of bleach and citrus-scented floor wax. People talk around me. They leave their laptops unlocked. They whisper their secrets in the faculty lounge while I empty the trash. It's a quiet life, a blue-collar noir existence where the stakes are measured in bags of sawdust and rolls of paper towels. But when the sun goes down and the last teacher leaves, I retreat to the supply closet. Underneath the industrial-sized bottles of glass cleaner is a custom-built rig that could bypass a bank's encryption in under 6 minutes. I didn't use it to steal, not exactly. I used it to observe. I built an algorithm, I called it the Vanguard, that tracked the flow of illicit capital through the city's offshore accounts. I found the kickbacks, the bribes, and the hidden fees. And then I started taking a finder's fee from the people who could least afford to complain about it. I wasn't Robin Hood. I was a man building a mountain of gold while living in a valley of dust. Elena hated the dust. She married the man she thought I was, a hard-working guy with a steady paycheck, but she couldn't stand the reality of it. She wanted the life the lawyer promised, the life of a woman who didn't have to check the price of milk. She didn't know that I had $6 million in an encrypted account, or that I owned the very office building her lawyer worked out of through a series of shell companies. I kept it from her not because I didn't love her, but because I knew that the moment I became someone, I would become a target. I saw what happened to the geniuses who flew too close to the sun. They got sued, they got used, and they got broken. I chose the mop because it kept me honest. It kept me grounded in the reality of the world my parents died in. The physical labor was a penance for the digital sins I committed every night. I enjoyed the rhythm of the buffer machine. It was the only time my mind was quiet, the only time the code stopped screaming in the back of my brain. Back in the courtroom, the lawyer was reaching his crescendo. He was talking about potential and responsibility. He looked at Elena, who was dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. He called me a failure. I looked at the clock. 2:00 p.m. That was the timestamp. The judge cleared her throat, about to speak, when her clerk leaned over and whispered something in her ear. A document had just been filed. An emergency disclosure. The clerk handed her a tablet, and the room went still. I saw the blood drain from the lawyer's face as his own phone vibrated on the table. The judge's eyebrows shot up. She looked at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. She wasn't looking at a janitor anymore. She was looking at the primary shareholder of the Chatham County Development Group. She was looking at the man who had just purchased the debt of the law firm representing my wife. The silence wasn't gray anymore. It was heavy, electric, and terrifying. "Mr. Thorne," the judge said, her voice trembling slightly, "it appears there has been a significant oversight in the financial discovery phase of this trial." I stood up, smoothing the front of my Goodwill suit. The hole in my shoe didn't feel so big anymore. I didn't need to say a word. The code I had written 10 years ago was finally doing the talking for me. I was done being a ghost. It was time to show them what happens when the man with the mop finally decides to clean house.